Global perspectives is good, Steve, and of course in South Africa we have the challenge that many leaders perhaps go global and don't come back, which leaves us with a dearth perhaps of leaders in South Africa. We also have transformational challenges. How do we overcome obstacles like that in South Africa and develop black leadership for the future that is relevant to South Africa?
Yeah. And I think what that relates to is a very it's a process which isn't left to chance, but one which is absolutely driven out, from a strategic perspective. The reality is there will be gaps at a point in time, and there will be people that we need to put into positions which maybe aren't totally ready for those positions at any point in time. And it's how we in fact manage that transition process which will lead to a better outcome for all involved. And I think that, as we all can reflect on situations which have affected us from a macro perspective here in South Africa, and where we've seen where that process hasn't been managed effectively, and what some of the implications are of those, which we're bearing the results of these days, the importance of getting that right now is absolutely paramount as we go into the next phase.
I'll tell you what's quite exciting is you mentioned leaders getting global experience. Specifically from an interim management perspective, what's quite exciting is the number of interim executives that we get from across the world that have a strong desire to come back to South Africa or Africa. Africa's certainly the hotspot and probably the fastest growing economy, albeit off a low base. I think what's important through that, there seems to be almost a gold rush mentality, everyone wanting to get into Africa, is to focus on, as opposed to the pioneering aspect, is to focus around sustainability and have a long-term view. And while there's this willingness to lead, they must be wanting to lead for the right reasons.
Jonathan, how do you transfer the skills and talent from current leadership to the next generation of leadership, and should this be an ongoing process?
Yes, it's one of the core tasks of leadership to develop the next generation of leaders. It's absolutely essential for sustainability. And as I said earlier, very often that is lacking. There's a style of leadership which comes out of the Dark Ages, which says, I'm in charge and I will kill any prince who's kind of threatening my position as king. It's not an African style or whatever. I mean, we've seen it throughout the world. Literally, kings killing princes throughout our history around the world, and that is just so destructive. And we still do see that happening in many cases. So there's a task to educate leaders in the joy. Actually, it's a tremendous challenge and opportunity of developing leaders beneath them. How do we do it? Well, there are various ways. There's the coaching and the mentoring, which are related but distinct fields. There's creating within the organization a culture of respect for talent emerging and making space for them. There's a sort of HR function to move people around, to give them exposure to different people as well as different contexts. There are formal programs like we run, which might be an education program like an MBA or a short executive course, where you get exposed to conceptual stuff, but more than that, you get exposed to a network of people from different industries, different organizations, and so on. So there are a number of different ways of doing it, and it needs to be customized to that particular person's development. So having identified the person, the next kind of almost diagnostic challenge is to say, what does this person need to reach that next level, to be ready for that next level? And that's going to be unique for each person.
Panel, I'm afraid we're out of time, but thanks all very much for coming in and contributing today.
Thank you.
Well, thanks again to this evening's guest. That's Steve Smith, he's Senior Executive at Accenture, Natalie Davies, Head of Interim Management at Cycan, and Jonathan Cook, Executive Director at GIBS.